Welcome everyone to the July Focus Series. In today's Focus Series, we are going to look at the topic of enabling conversations on legal entities. But maybe just before I start, what do we mean by enabling conversations on legal entities? Here we're talking about clients that have businesses, that perhaps have trusts, that have multiple business partners, with agreements in place. And typically for these clients, things are quite complex. And what we want to work through today is how AssetMap can help take that complexity and really make it simple and visual for clients to really understand, make sure we're on the same page, provide that clarity so that they can make the decisions to move forward. But I'm going to start with just a little bit of the why. So typically, if a client has a business, we often know that they have a business, they're an owner of a business, and we understand perhaps the value of that business for them. But what AssetMap gives us the ability to do is just go to that next level and unpack what sits inside that business and how does that impact the clients, their family, and the overall financial plan. By doing that, it also gives us an opportunity to highlight any potential opportunities that we see in working through that structure, but also identify risks. Often there's things that come up when we go to that level that could be a potential risk for the clients, and working through it in AssetMap helps us do that. Of course, it expands the conversation as well. We're not just looking at the individual and their spouse, but also the business, the trust, and how all these different role players and stakeholders are linked together. But probably most importantly, it's around creating clarity, helping the client see it in a visual way so that we understand their position, they understand their position, and then work to what are the changes that we can make to move forward. So I'm going to go through a couple of examples today. Oh, sorry, you go, Benny. No, I'm going to go through a couple of examples today where we're going to work through sort of existing AssetMap features as well as some recently released features that really help to illustrate and show this to clients.
I just want to add, Kirsty, that this topic can be dry as mud. I tell you, and if you think about it, and I want to impress on everyone, if it's tough for us to keep focused and engaged, imagine how difficult it is for clients. So probably the two key points today is use these tools to engage the clients, and secondly, to make these conversations scalable, so that we can have it frequently with more clients. So really that is keeping clients' attention. I think that's the critical.
Yes, it's the main thing. And I think that's going to be highlighted, Benny, in this first example now that I'm going to go through as well, where I'm starting in the relationships tab in AssetMap, and you would have seen this. This tab has had quite a few enhancements over the recent months. But I wanted to do an example that was a little bit complex as well, because I think it really reflects what you're saying, where there's lots of individuals, there's lots of businesses, lots of trust, and how do we bring that all together? So in this particular client, we have David and his spouse Emma. They have 2 adult children. One of those children is married. They have a grandchild. They have different business partners that they're working with. They have a trust. They have different companies that they're connected to. So first and foremost, to Benny's point, looking at this list, you can easily see how you can get lost in.
I already feel the mist, the mud. Like I'm already in the mud.
Exactly.
This is tough.
Exactly, of who's who, and how are they related and how are they linked together, and what does that mean for the client's plan. And the reason I wanted to show it in here first in the list view is to illustrate the difference that how you can use AssetMap, specifically this new visual relationships map view, to take this detail, this complexity, and make it really simple. So I've created some visual relationship maps for this family, and we'll go through that now, but I'll also go through how you can create relationship maps for your clients. So I'm going to pop over here to the visual, and here we can see that same information just expressed in a drawing, in an illustration, in a visual that makes it really simple for the client. So now looking at this, I can easily see, okay, David is the primary client. He's also the founder, trustee of the Williams Family Trust. I can see, okay, James is actually the business partner. Rachel is also a business partner. And I can see how, that shareholding is split. So here it's actually through the trust is a 50% shareholder, and James is a 50% shareholder of Green Hill Interiors, but Rachel is then a 40% shareholder of Oak Ridge, whilst the Williams Trust is a 60% shareholder. So immediately you can see how you can take that complexity and make it simple and open up a conversation with the client, especially because often we're reflecting what the client is sharing with us. And this is just a great way of showing it to the client and saying, have I got this right? Is this how the structure is? What comes up for you as the planner when you're looking at this structure? What questions come up for you? What sort of things do you think we could move forward on? But also just, it's a great way to bring in the other specialists you're working with, whether it's, tax consultants or attorneys, any sort of specialists that are assisting with the client. This is a great way of bringing everyone together. Are we all on the same page? Is this the structure? And really open up those conversations. And you can create multiple relationship maps for a client. So this is one just reflecting the businesses and how the partnerships are working and how that shareholding is connected. But I could also want to view the family structure. And I can simply do that by clicking, in this case, because I've already created the map, change map, and I can flip over to a different view that I've created where it shows, the two individuals that are trustees of the trust. It's showing me who the beneficiaries of that trust are and how they're connected to the trust and to those individuals. And just by looking at it, you can already start thinking of questions that come up. Is there a third trustee, maybe an independent? Is that something we need to discuss? So it automatically opens up conversation and questions whilst just providing a great visual for the client that they can reflect and see, is everything the way that it is meant to be, or are there changes that we want to make? So I'm going to go through now how you would create these relationship maps for your clients. So the first thing is when you want to create a map and you come into the screen and select visual, you'll see it'll start off like this. A new one. And you can create new ones at any point in time by just clicking on this Add New button. You'll see it automatically gives me a view of the two primary clients, the children, and then the grandchildren. So it'll give it to you in sort of a hierarchy or family tree structure. But from here, I can move things around, add people onto the picture, take certain individuals off the picture, just by clicking on it. So for example, if I wanted to, just for this particular view, I want to take Tom Jones off, I can simply click on Tom Jones and select delete on my keyboard. It's not deleting the member, it's just moving them down to my bar at the bottom here, where I can add them again at any point in time. I can also move individuals around so you can really create the picture that you want to create for the client by just selecting these boxes and dragging them around the screen. You can also connect individuals by connecting these little white circles that you see here. So I can click and draw a line from one individual to any other individual. And I can add text boxes. And I think this is probably the best part about it, is just adding text boxes to show relationships or to show questions that I want to ask. I can just add that text box right onto that relationship map to remind myself to ask that question, but also to have that for the client to see. So just working through all the functions at the bottom here, I can add people to the map by just clicking on them here, people or entities, move it around. I can connect individuals to entities or to each other. I can even add members and entities and professionals directly from this relation map screen, and that'll add them into the asset map as well. So I can build my household from this relationship map of who are the people that are in this household and how are they connected. I can add professionals, so anyone that outside that the client is working with, whether that's tax specialists or legal specialists, I can add those professionals and get them on the map so that I have a view of everyone that the client is engaging with. How to flip through the different relationship maps is I can click on change map here and I can jump across back to my entity. It's going to ask me if I want to save, say yes. I can jump across back to this entity map that I created where it shows all of the businesses, and I can then flip back to the family and the trust, or I can flip to this new map that I just created. I can also rename my relationship map by just double clicking here on the name on the bottom left, and I can just call this relationship map, name it, and just click out of the box. It'll save that name, and I can save any changes that I've made. I can at any point in time create a new relationship map or clone one so that I can just make some changes, but at least not start from scratch again. Then I can clone the map, make the changes I want, and save it. And of course, I can delete any that I want to remove from my relationship maps view here. So the first one is, really think about when you're working with these households, who are all the people that are involved, as well as the businesses, the companies, the trusts. Add all of them in and then start creating relationship maps to show how they're all connected. What are the questions that come up for you? Add text boxes to reflect that and work through that with the client. So you can have different maps for different conversations that you want to enable. Now, yeah, Benny, you go.
Can I just
I'll take
add to you before
order.
you
Please
before
do.
you move off this point, Kirsty, just quickly just show people how you zoom in and out.
Okay. So
Yeah.
I'm using my scroll bar on my mouse to zoom in and out, but you can also zoom in and out here. So I can click zoom in, zoom out, or just original view. Okay.
I mean,
And then I can,
there's also keyboard shortcuts where I think it's Control plus and
yes.
minus. I love that for me, that's
Okay.
quicker to do it that way. But the point I want to illustrate here is that the maps can get quite complex. And so you might notice that you can't print or generate a PDF of a relationship map at the moment. It's not because it's like hard. Technically we can do it. The problem comes with the zooming in and out. So over how many pages? Like at what point do you cut it over onto a second page, and do you do it down or across? So I know the IT team have got some suggestions, so we will make it a printable version. But the problem is with that scaling.
Yeah. Perfect. But the one key point I want to mention is while you can't print it, you can share it to the client portal. So if you've given your clients access to the client portal, this is one of the areas that you could add to that permission set and share relationship map with the clients. You can create all these maps for them, share it to the portal, and they can view all the different views on there. Okay. But that's in relationship maps, and this is showing the connection of all the individuals and how they connect to the business and trust. But I want to take the next step is how do I reflect it on the asset map itself? So how do I reflect the financials for these different entities in asset map? So here I've just got another example of Robert and James Taylor. They're brothers. They own a company together, and that company is a property company. So we can see here they've got 2 buy-to-let properties in that company with mortgages still on them, and they're receiving some nice net rental income from those 2 properties. Also on the right-hand side, you can see here that they've had some surplus profits over the years. So we've added that in as an investment. And I've also added this loan account. And the reason I added this in the example is that this comes up quite a lot when you go to that next layer of where, either the client owes funds to the company or vice versa, the company owes funds to that individual. And we can reflect that by adding an asset, in this case, to the company to show that that the funds is owed to the company, and then also adding a liability under the individual to show that they have a negative liability in their name in terms of what they owe the company. So great, just unpacking that. Whenever I add a business, I always just put a block there, loan account question mark, just to unpack that with the clients and understand that link. So again, we can see how it's opening up opportunities, but also identifying risk. But now that I've created the company and shown everything that sits underneath the company, I also want to be able to show, that Robert and James own that company and what that value is for them. And there's 2 ways in Asset Map that I can do it. In this first example, if I click on the company here, I'm just going to close this on the left. If I click on the company here, you'll see in the right-hand side, I can link it to members and tick this assign entity ownership to show who owns what. In this example, I'm not doing that. I'm going to show you what it looks like if we do that in the next example. But in this example, I've left that unlinked because I want to keep it quite separate. This is in the business. This is what's in your individual. capacity. So because I've kept it separate there, I have to then add an asset under James and Robert to show the value of that shareholding for them. So if I click on this asset, you'll see I've created a non-retirement asset that where, James and Robert each have 50%, just called it shareholding in that property company and put the full value in here. And that is now splitted between the two of them to show each individual's shareholding in that company. Also added the liability, the loan account here for Robert, so that we can see the difference in, the net values for each of them. So this is the one method. Add the company, add all the assets and liabilities and incomes that's inside of that, and separately add an asset to show the ownership. Another way that you can express that in asset map is using in that business where we link members. So in this example, it's exactly the same now, but here if I click on the Taylor Property Holdings Company, you'll see here on the right-hand side that in the actual entity, I've linked it to James and Robert at 50% each. And I've ticked this box, assign entity ownership. Now, the difference in this method is that it's going to show everything that I've added under the company. It's going to show under Roberts and James when I select them. So instead of me adding an asset to show their shareholding, it's actually reflecting that next layer and showing the incomes, assets, and liabilities that sit within the company. You'll see that it does show it in a different color, and that's to indicate that it's not actually owned in this particular asset by this individual, but rather by an entity, and it rolls it up. So even though we've got two properties, it rolls it up into one total value and only reflects the percentage that that individual owns of the company here. So here we can see under the properties, that's the 50% that James owns. And I can click on it to expand and see, well, what actually sits underneath that rolled up block. So you can expand or collapse it and view it like that. Those are the two different ways to reflect it. From a reporting point of view, if I wanted to report for this client and show that view, if I click on reports, you'll see now under the asset map section, I can select whether I want that entity ownership to show or not show, and I can select whether I want to show it expanded or whether I want to show it collapsed. Okay, so just going back to here. So those are the two methods. Step one is always add all the individuals, add all the companies, add all the trusts, and then decide which method you want to use. Do I want to reflect everything that's under the business, under the person who owns it as well? Or do I want to rather add an asset to show their percentage of the ownership? Okay, either way. Right, and then the last example that I want to work through here is when it comes to businesses and business assurance office, that topic comes up. So in this example, we've got Michael and Aisha, and they together own Brightworks Media. Now, Michael is a 60% shareholder and Aisha is a 40% shareholder in the business, and the business value is currently 1.5 million. I've used method one, so I've added an asset to show the different shareholding that they have. Now, in this particular case, if I go ahead and look at Brightworks Media, let me just go back here. If I go ahead and look at Brightworks Media, we first cover that they wanted to put in was contingent liability cover, so to cover debts that's sitting inside of the company. So if I click on this contingent liability cover, you'll see that I can fill in who is the insured member. So in this case, it's in the event of Michael's death, that policy will pay out in order to fund and cover any debt that's sitting within the company. So here, the owner is actually the company, Brightworks Media, and they are the beneficiary as well. So here I can go in and put in who's the owner, who's the beneficiary, and who's the insured member. Similarly, if we've got life cover with cross option, here we know that the individual that's insured is Michael, and the purpose of this cover is for Aisha to buy out Michael's shares in the event of his death so that she becomes 100% shareholder. So in this example, Michael is the insured member because it's in the event of his death. The value is the same amount that represents his shareholding, the 900,000, but he is also the owner of the policy, but the beneficiary here is the discretionary business trust. So it's got an agreement through that trust that will then pay to his estate to transfer the shares over to Aisha. So you can see how you can add these different policies, including key person, contingent liability, and the life cover with crossover, to show what that impact would be on death. It's a great way of opening up this conversation. And here again, you can see that I can go into relationship map and I can create a visual of just how these people are all connected and how that shareholding in the company works. So Michael being 60%, Aisha being 40%, and then just mentioning the discretionary trust. And then some of you may have picked up 2 weeks ago, we did an update on legal documents. So if you click here onto legal, you'll see that we can add in different legal documents. In this example, I've added a deed of business trust and just showing who the applicable members are, who the empowered members are, who the beneficiaries are. But most importantly, you would have noticed there's a new tick box here that says eligible for beneficiary designation. If I tick that, it means that on any financial that I add, I can select that document as the beneficiary. So you could, create one for a will and select them as a beneficiary. But it also means that I can include it on the relationship map. So this is a great way of just, again, opening up conversations around what documents are in place, where they're being kept, any notes that I want to share on that. And they will also appear here at the bottom of my relationship map, and I can select, drag it, and include it wherever I'd like to show that we have these documents in place and where they are. Okay, so I'm going to put all 3 on. And once they're on the relationship map, I can even click into them. I can open up the agreement and I can see what are the details that we, captured for that particular client, for that particular agreement. And of course, pop over into the notes and see any additional information that I need to check. Okay, so nice little addition. Add in those documents that you can, ask those questions with the client. See, do they have it in place? If not, is that something we need to look at and reflect them here on the relationship map so you can always access it as part of that conversation. All right.
And I mean, Kirsty, just again, I mean, how many clients actually understand any of this? I mean, like clients really struggle with it. And if you're fortunate enough to get the specific client to understand, you can bet your bottom dollar their family doesn't understand it. So this is just a really neat way to just make it more real for clients and be able to join the conversation with it.
100% agree. All right, so maybe just before we recap and close out, and please, any questions, let us know on the chat. But I wanted to just highlight a couple of new things that came out today. So the first one is, on a client dashboard now, if I click on this household dashboard, we've just made client portal a more accessible. So you can see it here immediately on the household dashboard where you can set it up from here. If I click on that, it shows me the individuals in the household. I can, set up and send out the invites to get them onto client portal. I can also see the status of who's active or inactive on the portal, when they last logged in, what permission sets they've got access to, and I can always edit and change it from here. So just making that a bit simpler. You don't have to go into the member first. It's all here on the household dashboard, and you can set it up from here. You can also update your preferences or permission sets directly from here as well. So you don't have to go and find that space. You can do it all from your household dashboard. And maybe just to mention that recently we launched Client Portal with Client Portal Suggest, which gives clients obviously the ability to log in, make changes on the portal, let us know what's different in their life and share that back with us. And we've had some great feedback on that. So if you haven't tried it out yet, please do have a look. Let us know if you've got any questions and share your feedback with us. And in addition, another change coming today is something we call present mode. And what that'll be is just an additional button right at the top here. And the idea behind it is, when we're sitting in front of our clients and we're presenting with them, we want to change the view a little bit of the map by removing some of the menu items on the left and the right so it's not distracting for clients. Also creating it to be full screen, a bit like the F11 functionality, so you can see it, quite nicely on the screen. But it also will give you the ability to put on a blank screen, so you can sort of blur it and then reveal for your clients. So just a nice little feature for, especially if you're working on it live with clients. And we'll share more of that when we send out the recording. All right. Benny, I'm going to just share my final screen and close off for the day. Maybe just to recap, and I know it's a complex topic. There's lots of different options. It's, as Benny said, it's difficult for us to understand sometimes, and for clients as well. But I think the key thing that I'd like to leave you with today is just thinking about where you have those clients. How can you bring in relationship maps as well as the asset map to really reflect it visually, to create that simplicity, to take that complexity and make it really simple so that clients feel informed, they feel organized, they feel like they have clarity, and they can make the decisions that help move them forward. Okay.
Absolutely, and make it scalable. That I think is
Scalable.
that is the real benefit here too, that we can do it across more clients more consistently.